Hey guys, Simon here. Welcome back to another video. Today I'd like to do something a little bit different. I'd like to talk about some gaming memories. One of the things I like doing when I'm browsing YouTube is to check out other gaming YouTubers' channels and listen to their gaming stories from when they've grown up and just hear about all the different experiences people have had gaming through all the generations. And because of that, I'd like to kind of share some of my own stories. So for this first episode today, what we're going to do, we're going to start off where this whole PlayStation kind of obsession began. It was the time I was gifted my PlayStation 1. Let's get started. Okay, so for this story, we're going all the way back to the mid-90s and the 1990s. That was such a good time to grow up and be young. I remember spending all day outside just riding bikes with friends, just staying out late. You didn't worry about anything. There were no mobile phones and the internet in Australia was pretty much all but non-existent. So my family consisted of myself, my two sisters, mother and father. We lived in a small country town and I was about 11 years old at the time. I loved playing video games. I think our family owned, thinking back, this is going to take a bit of knowledge. It was a Sega Master System 2, so the revised version had a built-in copy of Alex the Kid. My father had an Amstrad CPC. Obviously it was quite old by then, but he kept that in my room and I used that all the time. And I had a Game Boy, I think it was from the Play It Loud series, so it was a clear one. I'm not sure, my Nintendo info is not really up to snuff, but I also had a copy of Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening and I played that game religiously, but also really enjoyed playing the Sega Master System. I remember the up button didn't work and it wasn't because of the controller pad. We tried several different ones. I think the pin inside the system actually had a problem, so you couldn't jump up, but you could still play Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and 2 and Afterburner, and played those tons. But I remember it was about a month before my birthday, but the date of my birthday was actually going to fall on the date that I was going to be away at school camp, and I would hound my parents religiously for a Super Nintendo or a Sega Mega Drive. For those of you in the States, that's a Sega Genesis, but I'm sure you guys already know that. But I really wanted either a Super Nintendo or a Mega Drive. Every month I would ride my push bike up to the general store that was, it's probably about only 2 kilometers away from my house where we lived at the time, and I would buy Hyper Video Game magazine, and I would read those things from front to back, like front cover to back cover, just soaking up all the information and just looking for anything related to Super Nintendo or Mega Drive. But I remember seeing lots of stuff about the Atari Jaguar, what was the other one? The 3DO. And at the time, the PlayStation was new, so it was kind of like the new console into the market. But I remember seeing tons of adverts all through Hyper Magazine for the PlayStation. It's like new 3D graphics, epic sound, it ran on CDs, and it just, all these new games coming to it, and it just looked like such a great machine. I also thought the 3DO was pretty cool as well, but back then you were like, oh, there's no way I'd ever get one of those. There's just, no, my parents are not going to buy that for me. But I had my heart more set on, like I said, either a Super Nintendo or a Mega Drive. So it was coming up to my birthday and I was hounding my parents, just, come on, I really want a Super Nintendo, I really want a Mega Drive. And I remember my dad saying, no, it's too expensive, mate, we're sorry. Like, you know, we just can't afford it. Maybe you can get a new bike or something like that. And being young at the time, I was a little bit bummed out, but I was like, oh yeah, okay, I guess a new bike would be good. And I kind of forgot all about the notion of getting a Mega Drive or a Super Nintendo. I just didn't think it was going to happen. Dad was pretty firm when he said no. And then probably, now it was about 3 weeks away from my birthday, and my father took me into town, and I remember going into our local Big W and he took me into the game section, and I was thinking, what's going on? Why are we in here? And he's like, I need you to pick out a PlayStation game. And I'm like, you want me to pick out a PlayStation game? He's like, yeah, I need you to pick out a PlayStation game. I'm like, how come? like, we don't have a PlayStation. Why do you want me to do this? And he's like, oh, it's my workmate's son's birthday and I've been invited along, so I thought they have a PlayStation, I'm just gonna get them a game. And I'm thinking, damn, this kid is so lucky. Like, my own father won't get me a PlayStation or a PlayStation game, but this kid gets a PlayStation game off him. I was like, oh, well. And I don't know why I didn't catch on at the time. Maybe it was just because I was young, like I'm young, naive, just didn't really think twice about it. So I was like, yeah, okay, lucky kid. And I was a little bit grumpy about it, but so looked through the games, and we didn't have the internet at the time, so I didn't know what game was good. So I was just browsing through the games. I'm like, what would be a game that I'd like? And this is the game I picked out, and this is the actual copy. So I chose a copy of Time Commando. So not the best game, but looking at the cover work, like 11-year-old kid is going to see that and be like, that is a cool looking game. That's something I want to get. So I chose out Time Commando, grabbed it. Dad went and paid for it. And again, didn't think twice, but after that, we went home, and then that afternoon I went out riding with friends and just forgot all about it. Just young, naive, just totally cleared off my mind. Then that night I returned home from riding and we had dinner. It's all done, so Dad's like, righto, you kids, so to me and my sisters, go get cleaned up, get ready for bed, it's bedtime, just the normal nighttime routine you do when you're young. So I remember after I got cleaned up, I walked down towards my room and I got to the doorway, and then this is such a good memory right now. I remember this clear as day. Sitting on my bed was some packaging, like a decent sized cardboard box, probably, say 40 centimeters by about 40 by 40, 40 by 50, whatever. And I could see down the side of the box, the top of the box, the face of the box was white, and then the side of the box was yellow. And I could see some small pictures down the side, because I'm still standing in my doorway, because I'm kind of, what's that? Just having a look. And then I could see the logo up the side of the box that said PlayStation. And I was like, no, what's that? Can't be. So I walked up to the bed, and then I just remember being just in total shock. I was like, it's a PlayStation. I'm like, no, it can't be. I read about this in Hyper Game magazine. This is that new console that was out. This thing's crazy. It takes CDs. And I just started flipping out. I'm like, no, it can't be. And while I was there kind of looking over the packaging, my mother and father had walked up to the doorway of my bedroom, and they were just watching me at the time. And I had picked up the packaging, I turned around, I saw them, and my father's going, happy birthday, mate. We're going to give you your present early because we know you're going to be away at school camp. We know it's not a Super Nintendo or a Mega Drive, but the salesman said this is one of the newer consoles. It's a lot better, runs on CDs. We think you might enjoy this one a little more now that you're getting older. You'll be a teenager soon. This is probably something you could use. And I was still in shock. I was like, I just didn't know what to say. Like, I was just ecstatic. Like, I never ever thought I would get gifted a PlayStation, because it was pretty expensive. I think at the time in Australia, it was, in '96, it was the $400 to $500 range. It was a lot more expensive than a Super Nintendo or a Mega Drive. So Dad's like, come on, mate, let's go out and try it out. I was like, okay. So I handed it to Dad because I didn't know how to hook it up to a TV. And then the whole family, so my sisters came out and joined as well, because my mother and father obviously put them up to it as well. So, hey, we're going to give your brother his present early. We all walked down to the lounge room, and Dad put the console in front of the TV. He said, well, mate, I'll let you open it up so you can check it out. And I remember opening up the packaging and just having that brand new electronics console smell, and that's just burned into my brain. So I pulled out, the controllers were on top, and then there was the hookups and the cables, and I'm a bit of a neat freak, and I was even kind of like that back then when I was a kid, and I just set everything up on the floor in front of me. So the AV cables, the power cables, and then there was the controller that was all wrapped up in the plastic, and then I got the manual out as well. Didn't end up using that, obviously. And then I slid the console out of the box, so it came out. It had your 2 foam inserts here that was wrapped up with that protective foam packaging. And I just remember, like I said, that new electronic smell. And then the Demo 1 disc, which I still have. It's the black cased one, so Demo 1 across the front of it. And then you had your registration cards, and I had them all set out, and I was just like, oh, anticipation, like, I cannot wait to get this thing hooked up. And then Dad said, right, just give me a second. And he went to his bedroom, and then he came out with the Time Commando, copy of Time Commando that we purchased that day. And Dad started hooking the console up to the TV, then to the stereo, because we had 2 big stereo speakers at the time, like this really old Sony stereo player, but it was actually like sounded pretty good. So he hooked it up to that as well. And we're just sitting there excited, waiting to go. And I remember turning around looking, and my mother and my 2 sisters were sitting there, and they were like really excited as well, because, you know, it's kind of this new machine. Like, it ran on CDs, you could play games on it, you could play CDs and music on it, because back then CDs were kind of new in Australia as well. We didn't have that many. I remember the first time we actually got a CD player, but that's for a different story. And he's like, rightio, it's all hooked up, so it should be on AV channel 1, so I've gone to AV1, turned it on, and then he's like, rightio, go for it, fire the system up. And then we all know what's going to come next. So I opened the disc tray, and instead of putting Time Commando in, I put the Demo 1 disc in first. I don't know why I did that. But anyway, close the disc, press the power button. And this next moment was pretty cool. And I remember this one fondly as well, because we were used to playing the Master System. And the Master System didn't really have a fancy boot up logo or anything. It was just put your cartridge in, that's it. Very pixelated, pretty standard. This is an 8-bit machine. So the gap from going from the Master System to the PlayStation was a pretty big leap in technology. So I pressed the power button on the PlayStation, and then just that Sony Computer Entertainment logo just came roaring onto the TV and through the speakers, and then the PlayStation logo was just... And looking at that for the first time, I was like, this, what? Like, I was just amazed at the boot screen. I'm like, how video game consoles do this? This is crazy. And I turned around and looked, and by that time Dad was sitting on the lounge next to my mother, and they were all just smiling with like anticipation for what was going on. And oh, it was crazy. So it loaded up, and then the Demo 1 disc has its intro, which goes like, you know, 3D graphics, sound, blah, 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 like just kind of a rolling advertisement for Sony. And I hadn't seen graphics like that on a console before, and oh, it was just nuts. So then I found the game section and kind of just scrolling through the games, and there was, so I didn't know what any of the games were. There was Crash Bandicoot, Wipeout, 2097. I mean, sorry, I hadn't like, I had seen the games in the magazines, but I didn't know how they played. So it was Wipeout, 2097, Crash Bandicoot, there was the Die Hard trilogy demo, Monster Truck Madness, I think there was Actua Soccer 2, there was a ton of them, a heap on there, and then a couple of videos as well. So I decided to load up Wipeout 2097 first, and then that was crazy, that one too. The game started, and I was pretty bad at it to begin with, but the graphics were just on a whole different level, the sound. And then I remember I chose a Pfizer ship, because you could either get that one or I think it was Eurocom Racing, and obviously the Eurocom ship was a lot heavier, a lot bigger, but I chose the Pfizer, and then played the demo for a bit, got the hang of it, and just seeing those futuristic graphics and the Red Bull logos and stuff, and then the blue jet stream that came out of the back of the ship was just crazy. And I was just so into this console and what it could do. And then Dad's like, righto mate, you should probably change the game now, try something else. And let your sisters have a turn, because by that time I'd been sitting there for about an hour and everyone was still smiling and just really kind of enjoying this moment. It really brought the family together. So we then swapped it to Crash Bandicoot, and so I could let the sisters have a go. And I remember the first time seeing Crash wash up on Insanity Beach, and like the graphics kind of looked even better than what Wipeout did. And we're like, what's that? And he can jump and spin and running through the beach and jumping over the crabs and dodging the rolling stones and the boulders and the pit traps and all that. And it was such a good memory. And then letting my sisters have a turn, and we're all just laughing, and mum and dad smiling up on the lounge. And it was just, as mentioned, it just brought the whole family together. And it was such a good night, and just a really good memory that just sticks to my mind to this day. And I really hope that maybe when my son gets a little bit older and if he starts getting interested in video games, I'm certainly not going to push it on him. He can do whatever he wants. He finds a system that maybe he's interested in, or I purchase him something that maybe I can have a nice moment like that with my family. That would be pretty amazing. But a really good time from back in my younger days. Such a good memory. Well guys, that is it for the first episode of Gaming Memories. If you've made it this far, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I know I probably got a little bit gushy kind of going through. Probably didn't make much sense, but just a really good memory that I'd like to share, and make a few more of these videos moving forward, talking about more memories while I was growing up gaming. Let me know in the comments below, what are some of your gaming memories? I'm sure you guys have an absolute stack of them. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. Remember, keep that positivity flowing, and I'll see you next time with more PlayStation content.